One day away from the 14th auction of the Indian Premier League. It's a mini auction, it's a short auction. Over 292 players are for grabs, including 164 Indians, little over 60 squads or 60 slots to be filled up. Plenty of big names, though, in this IPL auction. A lot of teams have some purse left, have some slots left. There are a lot of strategies that are going on already. To discuss everything on the auction tomorrow, we have Mustafa Gauss from Delhi Capitals. We have our own Deep Das Gupta and Boria Majumdar. We will analyze what the teams would be thinking, what could be the top picks, the top buys, all of that. But before we do that, here's Irfan Pathan telling you why you need to download the House app quickly. Have a look.
क्या आप भी किसी अपने सपने मेरे तुम्हारे टीम 11 पे टीम बना रहे हो और बच्चों के साथ खेल रहे हो? हमारे साथ खेलोगे? हाउस ऐप पे खेलो लेजेंड्स के साथ, हमें हराओ और जीतो डबल कैश. लॉग ऑन टू houseapp.com and win real cash.
Right, gentlemen, before we go to Boria and Deep for that, what they think could be the top 5 most attractive picks in the auction tomorrow, here's a quick look. If you can have a look at those graphics of the slots remaining and the purse remaining for each team. It's interesting because we all saw what happened in Dubai. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see where the IPL is played. Have the biggest purse left with them with 53.2 crore, 9 remaining. Rajasthan Royals second with 37.85. Right up until Mumbai Indians, 15.35. Delhi Capitals, Mustafa, they have 13.4 crore remaining with 8 slots to be filled, 3 overseas. So Boria, you've seen these numbers now. I know you and Deep, you've given us your top 5. So we'll go straight now to Boria's top 5 picks of the IPL auction from tomorrow. We'll just quickly go to the graphic before we go to Boria for his opinion on what the top 5 could be. There you go. Boria Majumdar's top 5. He has picked Glenn Maxwell, Steve Smith, 2 Australians, Chris Morris, Moeen Ali, the English all-rounder, Shakib Al Hasan, making a comeback to top flight cricket. Boria, Glenn Maxwell has not had an impressive IPL ever, but you think that this guy, obviously, he brings in that X factor, and a lot of teams would be grappling for him.
Yeah, and someone will once again sort of jump for him. I mean, and he has always been this perennial underperformer, but then he goes to Australia and he does what he does, in white ball cricket in the Big Bash and against India. And you tend to feel, will this be Maxwell's season? And there is an incredible attraction about this guy. He can hit incredible shots. He can start the bowling for you. And can bowl power plays. He does so for his team in Australia in the Big Bash as well. So that's why Maxwell, Shakib Al Hasan, if the IPL is in India, chances are it is in India, unless this new Maharashtra madness, if COVID starts rising again, it's different. But if they get it under control, which I think they will, it will be Bombay, it will be Mumbai and the Pune Stadium. So D.Y. Patil, Wankhede, CCI and the Pune Stadium. So 4 stadiums, easy bio bubble, multiple hotels, no travel, no flights. So that's, if you really think that, then, it makes sense. I mean, Indian conditions, except the Wankhede, which is a different wicket. But Shakib Al Hasan, that's why I've kept both Moeen Ali and Shakib Al Hasan and Glenn Maxwell as my top picks. Kylie Jamieson and Jai Richardson are the 2 people I would have kept there. But given that it is in India, that's how I've gone with my picks. But the other attraction for me is who picks Arjun Tendulkar. Will it be the Mumbai Indians? Will it be Mustafa Gauss and the Delhi Capitals? So I will ask Mustafa, because automatically that will be one attraction of this year's IPL auction. Who picks such Arjun Tendulkar? The only Tendulkar you can buy, because the father you can never buy. So the only Tendulkar you can possibly have bowling to you in the nets. The other thing for me, and again, very, very interesting, this year's auction, some young Indian talent, somebody like an Atharva Ankolekar, a Prashant Solanki, the under 19 guys. We've seen some of them already blooded, Yashasvi Jaiswal, for example. It's an important auction. I mean, why don't we go to Mustafa first, Rajushi? 4 of their boys starred in the test match win, and they have put out a tweet, Delhi Capitals, saying Delhi blood in India's win. I mean, real sort of champion tweet that. Ravi Ashwin, Aksar Patel, Ishant Sharma. So Mustafa, from the Indian standpoint, you must be delighted, but 13.4 crores, when you know you don't have that much money compared to a team which has 30, 40 crores, how do you strategize for it?
No, Boria, it's actually a very important auction for us because, I mean, while we've had a very good season and we made the finals for the first time, it is important for us to push the team and make it even better than we can. So we have to be very strategic in our decision making, and on top of that, with the purse that we have available, it is going to be challenging because, like you've seen, there are teams with 30 crores for 50 crores who will probably get their first choices because of the type of money they have to spend. But from our perspective, it is important to try and find um, those few players that can further improve our team and make us stronger.
Right. Yeah, in fact, it's going to be interesting now because Mustafa, now, like you spoke about your purse, it's 13.4, and Kings 11 Punjab, they have 52.3 thereabout. So there are these remaining purses. There you go with Delhi Capitals, 13.4 crore, Kolkata Knight Riders and Sunrisers Hyderabad, even lower, 10.75. So, like Mustafa said, there will be some very interesting strategic. It will be an interesting strategic auction, Mustafa. These mini auctions can be tricky when you look back at previous seasons. We've had a mega auction a couple of years back. These mini auctions are that much trickier for teams to deal with, and with all these slots remaining to be filled up, especially when you don't know where the matches are going to be played. That also will be a factor.
To be honest, our experience, we've never experienced the big auction, so we really don't know. We've only been into mini auctions, so to say, and have been very happy with how they've played out for us. We've been able to strengthen the squad in both those situations, and we hope to do the same again. Come tomorrow, because we have a very strong core. We're very happy with the way the boys are playing. Or like Boria mentioned, our Indian core has been instrumental in test performances in Australia as well as in Chennai, and we want to further strengthen that. We do feel we have a few gaps, and that's what we look to fill tomorrow.
Absolutely. Great time to be a Delhi Capitals fan, given what happened in the last IPL and the way these test cricketers played across these two series in Australia now. It's always a great time. Now it's a great time to be a Delhi Capitals fan. But we'll go straight to Deep Dasgupta now to pick his top five. I believe that's also an interesting few options. Let's have a quick look. There you go. Deep Dasgupta also wants Glenn Maxwell. He has Chris Morris and Steve Smith, but Jai Richardson and Kylie Jamieson. Deep, over to you for your options and your.
For me, listen, Glenn Maxwell, he's had a very average IPL. Every year he goes for some big money, but unfortunately he has not delivered in the IPL as yet. The thing is, in these smaller auctions, generally few of them get big money as compared to a bigger auction. Because, for example, I think Mumbai Indians and Delhi Capitals are a very good example, because they really don't need too many players. If you look at Delhi Capitals, or Mumbai Indians, they really don't, but they are sitting on a decent amount of purse. Obviously Mustafa will not divulge much, but I'm sure they would be looking at one, maximum two players, because I don't think there is anyone there apart from a few names can actually better their playing 11 or better their squad. So I think that's the reason why some of them might get big money here. Maxwell, because of that, I think RCB is quite interested, is what I hear. CSK, it'll be interesting. Maxwell in yellow would be interesting. He's generally done well in yellow, Maxwell. So, and if it's in Chepauk, his off spin will come handy. But fast bowlers is something that I'm looking forward to, because I think quite a few franchises would need fast bowlers. And Jai Richardson is someone who's extremely good in the depth. So is someone like Jamieson as well. Jamieson can hit a long ball too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the fast bowlers, and I also have a feeling that there will be quite a few good young Indian cricketers will be picked by the franchises.
Right. In fact, we're talking of fast bowlers, teams always would look for good quality fast bowlers. But Boria, there are not too many Indian fast bowlers doing the round. Obviously, Umesh Yadav is one of the bigger names in this auction. released by RCB. But also, since both you and Deep have gone for Glenn Maxwell, this guy is always so talked about, isn't he? Didn't have a great BBL, middling season there with centuries, 379 runs, but he's already expressed his interest. He wants to play for RCB. He wants to play with Virat Kohli. So, do you? I know it's a hypothetical question because teams have their own strategies in place. But if in the context of these teams, right? Which kind of team do you see Glenn Maxwell slot to ease off the pressure from Virat Kohli and AB de Villiers, or head into what sort of a role do you see for him in the IPL given his past performances?
See, if you really ask Maxwell, he can actually get Virat. I mean, make sure that Virat opens, and then Maxwell slots in the middle order and also bowls. So it's a perfect kind of thing for RCB. Even Chennai, I mean, he can sort of bowl at the start. MS has opened with off spinners before. But there's my question, and my question is for Mustafa. Mustafa, it is not going to be at Chepauk. We know that. So the options are Mumbai, from what we've been told by the BCCI management, or maybe outside of India. I mean, you have to go to a bubble. So are you going to keep that in mind in the strategic buys that you do, that it is not going to be the Firozshah Kotla, or for that matter Chepauk, or for that matter Eden Gardens? It will either be Mumbai, Maharashtra, or it will be one Indian city, or it will be the UAE like the last time round. Do these things also influence your decision making in any way?
Absolutely. Last time round we went into the auction, building a team to play in at the Kotla, and then no one expected what we all went through, and the team we had to play in UAE, which in a way worked well for us because we had enough of backups and enough of bench strength to adapt to those conditions as well. Now that we are a little more aware of the two options, in all probabilities, yes, we do have to keep that in mind when you're picking players.
Excellent. And Deep, same question. Did you keep this in mind while you mentioned your top 5 picks? Like the Wankhede will suit a Jamieson, or for that matter, a Jai Richardson. Can you explain to us a little bit more these kind of things that it might influence the auction?
I mean, a couple of things. Obviously, the venue would matter a lot. But when you look at someone like a Jamieson or Jai Richardson, these are guys who actually bowl fast. So even if you're playing on, let's say, Firozshah Kotla, which is traditionally not a very fast track, but then you need bowlers like them who have that X factor, who has that 140 plus kind of a pace, plus death bowling. I mean, when you look at these guys, I mean, these names like Jai Richardson and Jamieson and all, they are death over bowlers. So anyways, you need fast bowlers. And if you go back to last IPL, there haven't been too many bowlers who've been very good in the death. So you are actually looking for those bowlers. So even if it happens whether it happens in Mumbai or it happens outside India, you'll always need that kind of bowlers to bowl those tough death overs. Listen, I think someone who will go for, or my punt would be Chris Morris will be the number one or the most expensive player. I don't know why RCB let go of him. I think he was on 10 CR. There's a good chance that RCB might be thinking that they might get him cheap, but I don't think so. I mean, again, if he keeps himself fit, that's the only issue with someone like Chris Morris in the last couple of years. But he can bat at number 7 or 8, can finish games with that. He's done that before. With the ball, he bowls those tough overs, the first 6, the death, and he was, I think the most economical bowler in the death, I guess, something like that, or one of the top bowlers in the death last season. So I think Chris Morris is going to be a really, really sought after player this IPL.
Mustafa, why would an RCB release a Chris Morris? I mean, yes, he was very good. He obviously injured, but then came in and impacted. Is it because of the high pass, that 10 crores was his value? They think that, okay, we can still get him back at a much lower value. Is that an influencing call when you release a player?
It could be. I don't know the thought process for the RCB and management, and wouldn't be right for me to comment. But yeah, there are situations where you think that you might be able to get the player back at a lower price point, and you're ready to take that punt. It works sometimes, it doesn't sometimes. You've seen that in this auction. Things are, it gets a little tough to predict. but I guess they're ready to take that chance.
Right. But Boria, you look at the list of the base prices here. Harbhajan Singh, Kedar Jadhav among others in the 2 crore base price. Then you have a lot of these guys, very interesting picks. You have Hanuma Bihari at that 1 crore base price. But there's a lot of interesting mix here. But I just wanted to also understand, Boria, from you, the perspective of brand values that a lot of these cricketers bring, right? It's I don't the right question to ask Mustafa straight away on the eve of an auction. But Boria, since you've understood player auctions for so many years, you understand the brand perspective as well. What sort of do teams in these mini auctions also look at brand perspective, or is it going to be too strategic to look at such picks in an auction like this? It's a mini auction with only 60 odd slots to be filled up.
I think it's a very good question. Very, very good question. And again, I mean, Mustafa can give us an answer at least make us understand. So can Deep, because Deep has been involved with an IPL team before and has run an IPL team before. So from my perspective, yes. I mean, IPL is both on and off the field. Look at the kind of buzz. Delhi Capitals, for example, I remember a tweet by Parth Jindal and Mustafa that they had matched and crossed the sponsorship amount of the previous season, even in a COVID year. So that tells you how the brand value of that particular team, which obviously is related to their performance. And when they made the final, all of a sudden, Delhi Capitals, everyone was talking about a new team making it their chance of winning it, beating Mumbai Indians. Even if they did not win, they have created a serious flutter. So Delhi Capitals, for example, has become a better brand. Now, will a Harbhajan Singh, for example, I mean, a Harbhajan Singh and somebody who is way popular in Delhi does something like that. I mean, yes, I know there's Ravichandran Ashwin. So maybe Harbhajan is not the best example for Delhi Capitals. But does that influence managerial decision making, that you are carrying someone who can be part of media interactions and hoardings and branding and advertisements and social media with a, say, 15 million following? Does that influence an auction as well? That's a fascinating question, because the IPL is not simply on the field, it's off the field as well. Mustafa, does that at all come into play when you guys discuss on the table?
It does, but it doesn't so much in this situation where the auction has been so delayed and you don't have that much time between auction and season. Because most of our deals are done and there's no value add that you can get by signing on a big ticket guy. Yes, it would help in subsequent years, but this being the last I guess a bonus year of having the same team, and you go into a big auction thereafter, it's very difficult for you to build a brand story around a player that you may only have for just a season. So yes, in the past it is an important factor. It was very important for us when you think about bringing in a Shikhar Dhawan, when you think about bringing in a Ravichandran Ashwin, you think about, even for that matter, making Ishan Sharma a priority pick in the auction a couple of years ago. When we wanted to bring in Delhi boys, we wanted to bring in known faces into the lineup, something that the previous Delhi teams didn't have. So yes, they do add points from a discussion perspective. Not so much for us this year.
Very interesting that, Rajesh.
But Deep, come to think of it, I know again it's such an interesting perspective. Yeah.
No, I mean, and like Mustafa just mentioned, it does. It does. For example, and I think the Punjab franchise did actually mention that with Chris Gayle last season, if I'm not wrong, or the season before. It does matter. End of the day, from a marketing perspective, when you go to sponsors and all, you would need pieces, and that's that's an important aspect as well. But I think what Mustafa mentioned, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's a fact. I mean, you've just got a month to go, month and a half. But yeah, I mean, obviously, end of the day, it's the player and what he brings to the table as a player, but also the name does add on.
Deep, if that is the case, just tell me, what is your sense? Say a Harbhajan Singh, doesn't play domestic cricket, 2 crore base price. Would a Harbhajan Singh attract a team? I mean, Harbhajan Singh is Harbhajan Singh, for God's sake, one of India's greatest.
Yeah.
Like when I talk about Bhaji, and I'm like, this is Bhaji. I mean, so will a Harbhajan Singh or even a Kedar Jadhav, who has been part of a mainstream franchise for so long, will such players attract teams? I mean, do you think they will get buyers?
I think they would, because again, this auction is only for 1 year, right? So you would want experienced people, I mean, players like Kedar, even though they might not straight away fit into your playing 11. You might still want, I mean, for example, there, and mind you, a middle order batsman like Kedar Jadhav, there aren't too many of that kind as an Indian middle order batsman. And the experience that he has. So obviously, I'm sure there'll be takers. As far as Bhaji is concerned, again, I'm sure there'll be someone who would want to have Bhaji in this in that dressing room. Again, the experience, the name, I mean, of everything that he brings to the table. So I'm sure there'll be some franchise who would want Bhaji, and the experience of someone like Kedar. There are quite a few experienced players in the auction this year, like Kedar. So yeah, I think there will be bidders for them.
You know, Rajesh, I think Anil Kumble might well pick Bhaji. And it will become that
Absolutely,
pairing
right?
again. That will be
What a
superb
pair
from
that
the
would be.
branding standpoint. Exactly. And Kings 11, I mean, Kings Punjab, Punjab
Sorry,
Kings, whatever it
another
is.
big name we missed out, Indian big name, not a big name per se, but an important player is Krishnappa Gautam. Watch out, there'll be some bidders for
Yes.
Krishnappa Gautam.
So you know,
Absolutely.
from that standpoint, KL Rahul to have Harbhajan Singh, a Punjab boy in Punjab with Anil Kumble will be a terrific ad. Terrific ad.
Right.
So
Al- Also, Deep, I've been getting some. I was discussing the auction with a few of my friends last evening, and they had an interesting perspective. They're like, obviously, this is very hypothetical because Bangalore have some 35 crore left, and Steve Smith, if he goes up on the auction table, whenever he goes up on the auction table, and they could. But they're like, what about that matchup with Steve Smith, Virat Kohli, AB de Villiers? Again, these mini auctions could be tricky, and there are some very good buys, right? Steve Smith, again, hypothetical. What if he just comes out for 6 crore, and you never know? It's lining up straight with ABD and Virat Kohli, and we all know what happened in Bangalore. They're past it, but it's going to be a fascinating lineup, right?
It could be, but I think they would be looking at middle order batsmen. I think their top order is there. Anyways, they've always been top heavy. So I think with Padigal, Virat, ABD there, it's kind of sorted the top order. Maybe they might look for an opener. Might look for an opener. But I think where they've struggled over the years is the middle order, and I think that's something that'll be interesting to see how they manage that middle order of theirs.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if Mustafa bids for Steve Smith. He won't say much, but I won't be surprised because, I mean, if you read
Don't,
that lineup,
Mustafa, you guys have got enough openers here.
so
Yeah, I mean, if required, open with Rishabh.
again, I mean that man sooner than later might well be the cap, you know, with Shreyash in that leadership group of Delhi Capitals. What a season that fellow's had, and I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to empower him and make him, you know, part of the leadership group, vice captain or something like that.
No, true. And also, Mustafa, like we already discussed this, right? This is a great time to be a Delhi Capitals fan. I'm sure, that a lot of strategies being worked out. But an extension to what Bori asked you earlier on the show, obviously you have a lot of considerations to make because of the bio bubble, also the short turnover time. You've had, or like you said, all the couple of mini auctions that you've been had are mini auctions. But does it make things more complicated now, bringing into perspective the image, the brand image of players, the availability, the slots, and the time travel? So how complicated does this become, not just for Delhi Capitals, but from an auctioning point of view? Because there's very short turnover, November, and the IPL could be in the next couple of months. It's just about barely 4 or 5 months between two seasons.
Yeah, it's been very quick. Usually there's a good downtime that we have before we regroup and start the planning process. So it is going to be challenging, and not to mention that everyone's probably been playing continuous cricket since the IPL. going from one bio bubble to another. So those are also factors that we have all got to take into account. And slowly we're also hearing about lot of bilateral series that are leading into the IPL. So everyone is going to be coming in with decent amount of workloads, which is something that we always monitor. So it is a tricky situation, which is all the more important for us to get our picks right, our backup players right, because it's the strength of the squad that's going to be the deciding factor. And I think that's something that we have seen over the last so many years of the IPL, whether it was CSK dominating or Mumbai Indians. It's not just about the first 11; it's about the bench strength as well, and that's something that we would look to really booster with the money that we have this year.
Rajeshi,
Can I ask you this question?
a public request for Mustafa would be, once Ricky Ponting comes in, they need to do a digital show with Rishabh Pant, Ravichandran Ashwin, Ajinkya Rahane, asking Ricky Ponting that you'd mentioned we'd be bowled out for 200. Now tell us in front, what do you think? That will be the biggest.
Why do you want to cause problems before my season starts?
From your branding perspective, you will get 10 million hits in that. I'm telling you, you trust me on it.
Right. So, Mustafa, I mean, if I may ask this question, and obviously it's up to you, you want to answer it or not, is have you heard anything in terms of availability of certain players in terms of, for example, South Africa? So there might be a Pakistan series happening in South Africa, right? So any information on those lines in terms of availability?
So we're still following up. Yes, there is a Pakistan series that's happening, and there is the T20 games kind of lead into the IPL. So we're still awaiting clarity on that, which would be an important point for us with KG and Nokia, in whether they're in the scheme of things for them or when they'll be available for us. So that is an important factor.
Very good question.
Right. Deep, can I also put you in a bit of a, imagine you're auctioning, right? You're auctioning players now. Two players, one in the base price of 2 crore, the other in the base price of 1.5 crore. You have you're looking at either Glenn Maxwell to bolster up your middle order, or you have someone like Sheldon Cottrell, the pacer. There are also loopholes in certain teams in terms of the pace quality. In this particular auction, you don't have that kind of Indian pacers in the auction. Like we said, it's mostly Umesh Yadav, the biggest team, or you have another batsman in the 1.5 crore category. In the sense, you have David Malan, who has been very impressive in the T20 format. So how would a team push for that kind of consensus, whether you start with a 2 crore base price or a 1.5 crore base price? Because remember that we've seen some very good smart buys in these mini auctions, because teams are left with limited spending power in terms of the remaining purse. How do teams push for consensus among players of more or similar?
I guess the way I worked when I was there was you take options, right? Okay, so you have your scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario. So you have these 5-6 scenarios everyone has a fair amount of idea in terms of who's going to go for how much, and how much are you willing to go for someone, right? If, for example, Bhaji is 2 CR, and then you prioritize, do I need an off spinner? If you're desperate, end of the day, it's demand supply, right? It's plain simple economics. For example, a fast bowler or Indian middle order batsman, or for example, an all-rounder like a Shivam Dubey. You don't have Indian, with that skill set, somebody who can give you 2 overs, maybe 3 overs. I can finish games, can bat at number 6, 7, can hit a long ball. So again, it's like every franchisee would have its own list of priorities. Who would they want, or at what level are they willing to go for it? So so there is these limits and all that. And also, another very, very important factor in auction is whose name comes up first, right? For example, there are 3 off spinners. Suddenly, Bhaji's name comes up first. Anyways, Bhaji would be in the marquee list or whatever. I guess that'll come anyways first. But when someone's name comes up is also a very important aspect. someone whose name comes up first will obviously attract more value because there'll be more franchises going for it for him. So yeah, so I mean, it's fascinating. Auction is when you're sitting on that table, it's dynamic, it's free flowing. I mean, you've got to keep changing your what you want, or the numbers that you're willing to go for. It's fascinating.
Also, Boria, before a lot of the auctions, you've told me several times, watch out for this cricketer, watch out for several domestic cricketers. If I remember right, you had also pointed this out about Mohammad Siraj, that, watch out for this boy. This guy is going to go big because of his skills. You've obviously followed domestic cricket closer than a lot of people in this country. You've seen a lot of these guys develop. Can you pick up a few of these cricketers that you see from this auction that fans would be watching out for? And suddenly those, Krishnappa Gautam, when he got that mega deal, right? He came out of nowhere. That Mohammad Siraj story became such a feel good factor around the IPL, and now his performances for India. How many of these cricketers can you pick from for this auction who've not, we've not heard a lot of, but you see them making, headlines tomorrow?
If you take a look at last year, just think about it. I mean, you have a Devdutt Padikkal, you have a Mohammad Siraj, you have a T. Natarajan. I mean, Nattu became perhaps the greatest IPL story. I mean, from the IPL to playing all formats for India within 2 months. So there is always that zing to an auction. That's why to pick Mustafa's brains was so important. I mean, do you build such a story? I mean, Delhi, for example, has the way I know that team, they have nurtured their players. The good thing about a JSW is they have always protected these guys. And Mustafa is, and it also helps where these guys come from. Mustafa is a former sportsman. He understands this. Their management is involved in sport. Mumbai Indians, they've been hands-on over the years. They've built a core, and that core has served them over the years. A KKR with an Abhishek Nair, for example, they've got an academy. They go a particular way. So you want to follow these stories. I mean, that's why I mentioned a couple of them. I mentioned an Atharvan Kulekar. I'd seen him in the under-19. You've seen what a Ravi Bishnoi did last year. So there are always these stories, and that's why it's an Indian Premier League. You want Indian boys to excel. And again, I mean, somebody for me, an IPL is a great platform, and now you understand how good it is, because directly from the IPL you excel in international cricket like Natarajan did. So quality-wise, cricket-wise, it's right up there. Rajesh, your time is up. So my final question to Mustafa would be, Mustafa, digitally when you coordinate with a Ricky Ponting, are you guys hooked up? Give me a sense of how it operates. So who will be on the table? Will you be on a phone call with Ricky when a bidding is going on? How do you, in these COVID times, how do you manage an auction when you sit on that table?
So strangely enough for us, over the last 2 auctions, Ricky has not been present. One, because he had hurt his ankle and was in a cast, could not travel. And then the previous time there was some changing in schedules and he couldn't make it. So he's been on the phone with us whenever needed. But I think most importantly for us, it's the preparation that goes into it. Yes, things change very dynamically in the auctions. It's not possible to put a game plan that is absolutely foolproof. But yeah, he's available on the phone and he's obviously watching on TV. And we speak in the breaks and keep up to speed with what's going on.
Excellent. And Rajesh, just remember, this is the last time these guys are doing an auction with 8 teams. Next year it will be 2 more.
Right.
So that will make the scenario all the more interesting.
Absolutely, and more complex, right? Because you saw our experts talking about cricketing perspectives. You saw Boria and Mustafa talk about the Brad perspective. You heard Deep talk about the economics and the ergonomics and the science behind it. Gentlemen, it's science. It's fascinating from what Mustafa, Boria, and Deep have told us. So we will look forward to this auction tomorrow. Obviously, we'll be joined by Boria and Deep. Hopefully, Mustafa will come on Sports Today again and let us in on the experiences.
What happens if these guys, their picks are actually the right picks? Do they get anything or not?
No. Unfortunately,
we will send them a lot of mishti doi, because
I will never. Deep has already sort of been making millions this year, so nothing for Deep. I am Saurav's house, you were the one who had your fish fry. I did not even have that last week. So no Mishti Doi for me.
No Mishti there for you. Okay, but Deep has been in Chennai for a while now, and it'll be a while before he goes back to Calcutta. So we'll organize some for him. So, and more often than not, Mustafa, both Boria and Deep get everything right, whether it's with their breaking news or the analysis. So they get everything right. So we won't be very surprised if that happens tomorrow.
Why do we get it right? Because Mustafa only tells us. Come on, man. I don't look. There's no hide and seek. Okay? There's no hide and seek. Why was it that Rishabh Pant?
But it's fascinating. Thank you. But
why was Rishabh Pant on Sports Today? Because this man made it possible. There's no hide and seek. So it's the truth. I mean, you speak the truth, man.
Rashi, close the show before Boria starts with something else.
Okay, his internet has gone, so I'll close the show. It's always a pleasure to have Deep, Mustafa, and Rajesh. We'll get Mustafa back after the auction to tell us the strengths and weaknesses, like the way he senses for the Delhi Capitals. We will also have Venki Mysore and Abhishek Nair from the Kolkata Knight Riders. We'll get you multiple team perspectives because the Indian Premier League, as we all know, is the biggest franchise tournament in the world. And Sports Today is your destination along with India Today for the best sporting action. Thank you very much for watching.